There, welcome to another episode of Finding Finland with your host, Rudy Owens, the podcast where we talk about all things Finland. Hi, it's Rudy Owens. Welcome to another episode of my podcast, Finding Finland. And my guest today is Bryant Tolles. And Bryant, can you share with us where you are in Finland?
I am in South Karelia, a little north of Imatra, right on the border with Russia. It's about 3.5 hours northeast of Helsinki, about two and a
Hmm.
half hours northeast of Lahti, and about 2 hours south of Joensuu. So it's centrally located in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
But
And the nearest
this
city
is
is, yep,
yeah, it's well, I mean, it's Imatra, which I call a city, and La Pineranta is the
right.
provincial capital um, of South Karelia. So, and those it appears that those groupings kind of change over time, but that's where we're at right now.
Okay. All right. And so if folks were looking at the map, they would see that there's that border right really close to Russia, north
Yeah,
of St. Petersburg, and that
yeah,
territory was drawn after World War II,
right,
after multiple conflicts with the former USSR. So you're very close
correct.
to where history was made during
Yeah,
those
definitely.
conflicts. Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely. It's an interesting place from an historical perspective, and the famous sniper Simo Haya was uh, born around here and
yep.
fought and is buried about 20 minutes away. So, um, it's and he has a museum that's
Right. Right.
dedicated to him, which is really I was there last summer and it's really they've just redone it. It's very interesting. It's all in Finnish, but if you can grab a guide who speaks English, then they can interpret things for you. But I mean, it's great. Lots of pictures and artifacts and such.
Yeah, and if people don't know the history, I think he is the most celebrated, and if you want to call someone who kills another person during war, celebrated sniper in
Right.
history. So he was
Yeah, I mean, it's a
incredibly
little hard
effective.
to, yeah, it's hard to I mean, he's a hero
Yep,
in Finland and it's it was, if you want to say that it's not like it was a war of aggression on Finland's behalf. They were invaded. So
right.
he was defending his country.
That's correct. Yep. Yeah, I saw some coverage of him on another social media feed about a gentleman who, like you, is not from Finland, who lives there and went to that museum and talked about it. It
Oh,
sounded
really?
very interesting. And
Yeah,
then
I mean,
also,
he's like you
yep,
go through the guidebook there and you see people from all over the place and you know people from the American military who happen to be um,
huh.
familiar with the story. They'll sign in, and I don't know much about the U.S. military, but he's sort of a well-known person in military circles worldwide.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can never escape the history of that conflict in Finland. That's one
No,
thing I learned during my short time there, my multiple times I've gone, just
yeah,
because of the impact of that conflict. So great. So we've got a couple of things we said we talk about. One of the things I just love to know, this is sort of focusing for folks who are tuning in, is just like I wanted to chat with someone who is living in Finland, who is in Finnish, to get sort of an outsider's perspective on what it's like to be in a country which has gotten a lot of attention around, lots of topics lately. NATO recently, the cutting of cables across the Baltic Sea, connecting Finland with
yeah,
its neighbors. So tensions are high. Um, International intrigue is definitely out there. There was recently a tanker that was commandeered by Finnish military. So Finland's in the news. So and so, therefore, it's sort of a good time to talk about it. And what brings an
yeah.
outsider like yourself to Finland?
Well, I grew up cross-country skiing in New England, and cold and can be very warm, so I wanted some uh, predictability. And it's just, I mean, I kind of see it as an adventure for the next 10 years or so to live over here and, uh, experience a different culture, and be able to do the things I like to do and possibly even pick up the language.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great topic in and of itself is
Yeah,
acquisition of language skills for a language that doesn't have European roots, but is
no.
Finno-Ugric, I believe, which is a Central Asian root for the language there. So
Yeah,
it's
it's like
not
you look at the language groupings and it's like Finnish is thrown in there in this kind of like other category
that's
with
right.
I
It's
think
another tree entirely from the
yeah,
branches.
like
Yep.
Hungarian, what is it? Hungarian
Yep.
and Estonian, I think are
Estonian. Yep. Yep. That's
Estonian in
right.
the same family.
Yep. And do you want to share a little bit about your sort of like what you do when you're not out skiing and
Yeah, I'm an
in the
accountant,
Finch?
so I'm self-employed and I do tax work. I do fractional CFO work. I spent 20 years in the Bay Area of California doing,
Uh-huh.
Silicon Valley stuff.
Okay.
Um, and so I've got some clients in that space and, that's all pretty flexible as far as location. So it allows me to be able to spend time over here and, kind of move back and forth between my two bases, one on the East Coast of the US and now, as it seems, one here.
Okay. All right. Okay. So that's interesting in and of itself. So I guess you have that flexibility. Are there other
Yeah.
professionals like you who are like from other parts of the world, sort of coming to Finland now? And what's drawing them there?
Well, I mean, I haven't, it's funny um, when you move someplace, uh, like a different country, it's sort of several layers of complexity on top of just moving to another part of America, which I'm sure a lot of people have that, where you kind of know how things work and you just have to find out the local tweaks. I'm here completely immersed in trying to figure out how to do things like, get rid of the garbage or, pay, who do I pay for? To answer your question, it just means that I've been so immersed in that day-to-day stuff that I haven't really um, been able to get out and I haven't met any other Americans over here
Oh,
yet. I'm sure there's a ton of them down in Helsinki, but um, I'm not in a big I'm in a picture like a town in northern Wisconsin or Minnesota or something that's just but it's not I think that this town has 2,500 people in it or something.
yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So there are people there living like I follow just, for reference, I follow like a Japanese guy who moved
Uh-huh.
there and he posts videos and sort of talks about his life and tries to show people he does it in the English language, not Japanese. So that's why I can follow him and
Yeah.
just sort of tries to provide like, guides to food, guides to going to parks, where to go for fun, where he's doing sauna. So sort of
Yeah, I
like
mean, that
outside of
sort of
just sharing your
stuff, just
stories.
like a basic how-to guide about how to do all the just like how work. Like today I figured out how to mail a letter, which sounds dumb. It's like where do I get stamps? Well, you get stamps at the supermarket, and
Right.
how does it work? Well, there's one stamp for within Finland, and then there's another stamp if you want to send a letter. It's like, all right, okay, I can figure that out.
Okay.
Um, but there, to answer your question about meeting other people, I haven't met specifically who's doing what I'm doing from America,
Hmm.
but I one of my next door neighbors, a guy three doors down, when I first came over here a few months ago, and he's like, howdy, and said all this stuff in an email in English. And I'm like, okay, he's used Google AI for translation. Well, I met the guy a few days ago. I walk into his house and he was like, "Hi, how you doing?" Like, you have a Southern accent. He's like, "I'm from Texas." Like, this guy
Wow.
lives three doors down from me. He married a Finnish woman about 30 or 40 years ago in
Okay.
Texas and ended up moving over here a few years back. There's another guy in town whose wife is Finnish, but he's from New Zealand, around Europe, and have landed here. They got young kids, so the kids are growing up. Um, going to school here, but you
All right.
know,
Yeah, I
uh,
saw this. I saw there's a film that came out that was looking at, the rankings for Finland being the happiest country in the world, and it was sort of
yeah,
peeling it back, looking at the social programs and the education system, what
yeah,
draws people, and then there was a family that was a woman was from Australia, the husband was Finnish, and they talked about one of the things that they liked about living at least in Greater Helsinki. I think they lived in Vantaa, was just
yeah,
how good the schools were and how well they thought the children were being educated, and that was really important to them as a family. So I guess people have different
yeah. I mean,
reasons and
I don't know a lot
families for one.
about that other than what I've read. And my daughter's out of the kind of elementary school
Yep.
age. You know, well, from what I've read, it's very egalitarian. You know, even within the what we would call public school system in America, within Finland, it's geographically wherever you go, it's pretty much the same menu.
Hmm.
Um, and you don't have these situations where some like a poorer area would have you know wouldn't have as good a school as the wealthy area. And
Correct.
also, I believe that there are very few private schools, so you don't have kind of two-tier system where these expensive paid schools are, the wealthy send their children and they're kind of gated off with ivy covered brick walls and such. It's
Yep.
not. It's just more of a level uh, situation from what I've
That's
read.
that. That's an excellent summary. And if for folks who want the policy wonk analysis, they can read a great book called Fintopia, which actually breaks that down with data in social science language, about egalitarian metrics. But I thought that was a really great description. Well done on that. I couldn't
Yeah,
have done it better. But the
I
book
mean,
is really good for anyone who wants to read something on that topic, which I think is worth a read because it still strikes people as odd. How did this happen? How did
yeah. I mean,
happiness
I
get
don't.
measured in
I think
Finland?
it's just sort of like a flavor of socialism has a bad connotation in America, but it's all of Europe has some flavor of you know heavy government spending on social and such. So it's just kind
Yep.
of Finland's spin on it. I mean, as an American, and you observe things over here, you're going to I spend a lot of time just kind of comparing and thinking, all right, well, this seems to work over here. Like, why is it so different um, where we live in America? And obviously, there's a lot of reasons why we're sort of more of a, you every person for themselves, and there's winners and losers, and et cetera. And here, it seems like there's a little more of a kind of a safety net and less sort of concentration the either sides of the wealth spectrum. So it's just
Yep.
interesting to see.
Yep. Yep. So I wrote down a couple of things I thought that would be just fun to ask you just because. So are there common, so can you share just sort of like how, today, Americans have, people are thinking about our country now via the person at the top, who everyone in the world knows
Yeah,
about probably. Are Americans sort of being thought of via our newly elected leader, or is the view from the Finnish folks you're seeing more generous to us? They don't see us
yeah. I
via the
mean, I
person
think
at the
that
top.
I would say that I have friends here, Finnish friends that I socialize with, so I've been able to get their feedback. It doesn't come up a lot
Mhm.
as America and Americans have been sort of conditioned to think that we're the center of the universe. But it's sort of like it's just kind of like curiosity and you know like what's going on over there.
All right,
So,
so I had just jotted down a few like I have things I love about Finland, like if I
uh-huh.
was to say what I like about Finland, I would like immediately talk about um just how livable it is. Every community I went to seemed to have
Yeah,
some sort of foundation to make life good and whatever provides for basics like nice recreation. Like
right.
there's a community clinic. The stores
Yep.
all seem to have decent food no matter where you go.
Yeah.
These very simple things. I'm a big fan of trails. I love
Uh-huh.
Finnish trail systems and how they have made that so easy. Like you pull out your app and then you find out what's going on the trails. You can even
Right.
find out what the ski conditions are. So those are things
Yeah.
that would leap to me. So are there like a few things that leap out to you that you've talked about some of
Yeah,
the
I mean the
things that you're just
skiing,
enjoying?
yeah, the skiing is obviously the big selling point to me, and we had a
Yep.
little bit of a late start to the season.
Yep.
December was warm.
Yep.
Um, but the last couple of weeks things have start I mean, we Finland doesn't have like these massive, um, you know, 2 foot storms that you might have on the West Coast. It's just things, it just gets cold and starts snowing a couple of inches every day, and
Uh-huh.
eventually that adds up. So over a week or so, more of these just random trail systems have started um, popping up, and you they have grooming and um, you can just it's just kind of like I try to explore a new place and try to ski a different place every day, and it is really it's what people describe. It's just you just any town is going to have um, skiing, usually lit trails because as necessity because it gets dark so early in the middle of the winter. But I was just driving around today, and there was there's this one 6K loop that's
Uh-huh.
single track. Somebody on a snowmobile just drove around, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to go ski that tomorrow. And then I stopped and did another place in town. And it's just there's no end to it seems, to the places you can go ski. And obviously,
I love your description of those trails. And so just out of curiosity, like when I was visiting my relatives who live in Kurica, or I don't even know if I'm doing the correct pronunciation, Kurica. You pronounce, I think the hard
oh,
accents on
Kudokai,
the
yeah,
first.
that's on the west side. That's home of Juha Mieto, the famous
Very good. Wow.
ski.
Yeah. Wow.
I've
Okay.
been there. I went there, and one of my side gigs is I buy all this old Nordic gear and either use it or sell it. And I was there picking some stuff up, and sporting goods store looking for something, and I kind of joked, "Hey, is Juha Mieto around?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, he's having lunch over at the Kurtaka Museum." And well, I'm not, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to stalk the guy, but it's a small town, and he's the famous resident, and he's a guy. So hopefully
Ah, that
someday I'll be able to get over there and get a selfie with him.
Yeah, no, I loved it when I first landed there. My distant aunt and her husband walked me by there's a famous sculpture of him right in the heart of town.
Oh,
So I've
really?
gotten pictures of it both in summer and winter. So it's people know it. But I loved that even a town that size has some really great trails and just like one of these trails is right by their home, and I could literally walk to
Hmm.
it and then go, where there was nice weather, go running, or in the winter I went skiing. And they have very nice
Yeah.
maps, and you're never lost. You sort of always know where you are. And it's online, so you can check the ski status. And that's not a big city. That's just a local municipality
No,
in like a farming area.
that's every city. I mean,
Yeah.
I was, I've skied every little town around me so far has some
Wow.
little trail network. And, like I said, it was a slow start to the season. So we were, we were skiing down in Imatra, which has stored. So we were skiing on the same little loop that they've been skiing on since the end of October. But
Okay.
finally, like I said, the last couple of weeks, things have gotten going, and
Uh-huh.
a couple of towns in between, and go up to um, Savonlinna
Uh-huh.
and around. So it's just, it's kind of like opening up that map that you describe you open it up and you say, okay, where am I going to go today? And
Huh.
because it's
Okay.
right here, it's like, okay, I have meetings from, this time to this time. I'm going to go off in hours in the middle of the day, and then I'm going to come back and finish work. And, you can, and if that doesn't work out, you just find a place that has lit trails and you can ski at night. It's not
Right.
cold.
Okay. Well, I mean, that was what my life was like when I lived in Anchorage, Alaska for 6 years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've
Well, I
been
think we're
lucky.
Helsinki is about the same latitude
Yep.
as Anchorage, somebody was saying. So,
Yep, yep, you're exactly right. And they're impacted by these shifts in climate. So you have these freezing
mhm.
thaws, and those create all
Yeah, I
kinds
mean,
of like
Helsinki's kind of like Helsinki doesn't get the conditions it used to. It's almost the banana belt of
yep.
Finland.
Yeah, I know. I experienced that when last winter when I arrived in February in a rainstorm. And
Yeah.
so it was sort of like distressing, but I still got my good ski in the municipality area, Palahena, which is the
Hmm.
big area which serves the metro area, and you can take a public bus there and rent skis there if you don't have them. And the trails are
Yeah.
well marked, and there's lights, and if it's good conditions, everyone's out and just enjoying life on a winter's day.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's that, I've seen this in Norway as well. It's just a part of the lifestyle is to go and ski. I mean, I guess similar to the way in New York City, a lot of people go run in Central Park. It's just um, it's just what people do.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep. So I see that you have posted a few things on the Nordic Skiing Facebook page. That's where I
hmm,
first encountered you. Um, you know, uh, I guess it's interesting to contrast the posts that we see in Scandinavian countries and the USA. And I think for me, what stands out is just how egalitarian uh, cross country skiing is, and it's
yeah.
less so in the USA. So
Well, it doesn't cost anything
right,
to ski. That's the
right,
first thing. Unless you're on a like one of the in the beginning of the season, if you're skiing on stored snow or artificial snow or something, then they're gonna understandably want a little money from that. But all these local trails are groomed by the municipality, unless we're talking about real high end, Lottie World Cup or something when they'll
true,
have professionals do it. But
true.
it's just the maintenance guy running the snowmobile or the piston bully around or something. It's usually the way it works.
Yeah, I just that's for me. It's like whenever I comment in the Nordic skiing area, I just talk about, what's a great place to ski. I said I like a place where everyone has the chance to do it, without spending a whole lot of money. And that to me is the definition of a great place to ski, where it's just part of the fabric of everyday life. And it sounds like it's something that you like too, good based on what you're
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah. No, it's definitely, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be liked about just generally a place where, it's not all about winners and losers. It's just like, hey, we're all only here for a short time, and let's set up a system where people can enjoy as best as possible the time they're on the planet,
Yeah.
versus making it a competition for 80 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just, one thing that was fun when I lived in Alaska, just thinking about cross country skiing, because I would always do it after work and it would be in the evening. And so you'd have that sort of glow, that sort of like
Yeah.
evening glow, that reflection that happens off the clouds, where you sort of get that ambient light that circulates sort of
Yeah.
somewhere between the clouds and the snow, and you can still see people and their dogs.
Yeah.
Is it like there
I
in your area?
No, that's not really familiar. I mean, one thing I did notice is from what sort of weird weather things is that there was, even when it was really cold out, there would there would be these periods where you'd get this mist that would come down
Uh-huh.
and it would, it might be, 15 or 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and there was this mist that was coming down and freezing to the trees, and it's like an ice storm had come through, but it wasn't an ice storm. It was just like this, kind of like this just frozen drizzle or mist freezing on the trees, and it was beautiful. It's beautiful,
Yeah.
and I'm not a meteorologist, so I didn't understand the how that dynamic happened, but yeah, you do get and that I think that's more of like a November, December thing. Now in January, it's actually getting quite nice. The days are getting longer very
Hmm.
rapidly, and
Yep.
we've had a lot of just clear days.
Okay.
So it's been
Are,
quite nice.
is it friendly on the trails? Do people say hi, say hey, or
Yeah, I
hoi?
mean, I not really.
Okay.
Finns are very reserved, and I mean, I try to, obviously we both skied in America too. It's like,
Yep.
I mean, how much do we hi a howdy when we're just out on a trail system, unless you like, you're just out in the middle of nowhere and you run into somebody, you might be more more likely to do that. But
Yep. True.
it's it. I don't run into a lot of people. There's just so many places to ski that it's like it seems like you're a lot of times you have the place to yourself. When
Okay.
we were just all skiing down in Imatra, then it got kind of crowded. But um,
Okay.
yeah, it's a lot of times you're just out there and you kind of feel, like I said, you feel like you got the whole place to yourself.
All right. Well, speaking of skiing, I had a couple things related again to the Nordic skiing world. So one,
Hmm.
like people plan these trips from the USA to go to northern countries to ski. So,
Right.
so question number one would be, if someone wants to go cross country skiing, should Finland be in their list? Because everyone thinks of, Norway,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
I've honestly never skied in Sweden, so I can't tell you, what a Swedish ski vacation would look like, but I'm sure that there's plenty of places to go. I mean, I'm not gonna, as far as the Nordic countries, it's like if you're going on vacation and you're gonna do like that once every 10 years foreign ski trip, it's like it's kind of hard to beat Norway in just in
Yeah.
terms of just the beauty and um, the history and everything. But if you're going to do something like what I'm doing, which, hey, where can I go where I can, buy a house and live there
Hmm.
most of the winter and be able to afford it? It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, hands down, you go to a place like Finland. I mean, Norway, every town in Norway at this point is Vale. I mean, the country is so wealthy, and it's
Uh-huh.
so expensive that it's great to visit and the beautiful scenery and the great skiing, but if you're looking for a place where you want to be able to stay for a while or hang out a second shingle, then Finland is great, and it's kind of it's got all the great skiing without all the frills.
Okay, okay, there we go. All right. And then the other thing I thought I'd ask, I also follow the Finnish cross-country ski team just on social
Uh-huh.
media. So, they've got one really great woman skier who seems to be getting, standing on the podium at I forget what they call it, the World Cup for
Right,
the series for this cross-country ski fanatics. They know what that's all about. So
right,
even my relatives knew about Jessie Diggins, who's our famous women cross-country skier
right.
who's now injured. So I guess for people to understand, like we're all entranced with American football right now. How important is the cross-country ski team to the Finns?
um the people that you just meet on a day-to-day basis. It's like you're talking to an American about basketball or something. It's like they all know, whether they're a fan or not, they all are aware of it, and they all know who LeBron James is. I mean, all the Finns
Right.
would know the big names, but to the extent people passionately follow it.
Mhm.
Um, I'm not sure how much of that goes on. I mean, I will say that, I was there was it was a big biathlon weekend down in Oberhof, I think, in Germany, and
Uh-huh.
I went into the gas station Quickie Mart, and they've got a
Uh-huh.
little restaurant there, and the biathlon was on the TV there. The biathlon was showing on the bar at the bar last
Okay.
night in town,
Okay.
along with national championships which were going on down the road. But
Yep.
Finland's a big hockey town,
Yeah.
hockey and
Right.
motorsports is huge.
Yep.
Rally, Formula One, motorcycling and such. Those are
Yep.
big sports as well. Um,
Yep. I will
Whereas in
attest to
Norway, it's
that.
just like, yeah, Norway is just ski, and some track and field and such.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Within my own family network, the guys have motorcycles, like nearly all the guys, and that's a huge part of their identity is their
Yeah,
motorcycles. And then
yeah,
one of my third cousins, he's like a gearhead. He's got like a 1969 Camaro, and he posts
yeah,
videos of like these crazy races that take place in Ostrobothnia in the summer. So they're definitely into their machines in Finland.
yeah. Yeah, you don't see it in the winter, but in the summer you'll see people out driving around their big their American those like 60s and early 70s monster mobiles before the gas crisis. Those things, you'll still see a bunch of those around here. People have collector cars and such.
Yeah, that's exactly what my cousin has. He's got his car in the garage and it's on his like Facebook profile picture. And he's defined by the man and the machine. That's who he is. And his wife apparently tolerates him these transgressions. So she must be a
Yeah,
very
well, yeah, I'm
generous
sure
woman.
there's worse things to be involved in as a hobby.
Yeah, I mean, he still takes time to spend time with the kids and be a good father, but he's
Yeah.
got to have his side sport. So that's what I know. And then my other relative in Tampere, the husband of my cousin, he like during the pandemic, he decided he was going to, whatever the guy hits late middle age, he needs his machine, so he bought a large motorcycle and he takes it out and I think for him, it's like part of that, the Finnish men, that's part of their identity too, is to be a man. And the machine is part of that Finnish manliness. I think that's my own impression, but I could be
Yeah,
wrong.
no, I think that it's a lot like America in that sort of from a shallow level, but if there's a lot of talk about macho bro culture and everything, and it's you get a little bit of that over here, but it's not it's kind of like there's humility as well as too. It's not like you know I love my car and I'm going to kick your ass or something, or everybody over here is served in the military because there's mandatory conscription for men, so there's not like this us versus them.
Cool. Yeah. I think that is important where you talk about military service as well as part of the Finnish national identity. I do know
Yeah.
that other countries around the world that is mandatory, like let's say Singapore, all the men in Singapore
Hmm.
serve in the military. It's like part of your rite of passage into becoming an adult. I do see there were women also, I saw a number of women in military fatigues at the train stations around
Yeah.
winter. So are the
Yeah.
women, can you confirm if the women are doing mandatory military service
I
too?
don't know. I'm not sure. I
Okay.
know that there's definitely women who serve, and it's
Yep.
funny. I was taking one of my friends had like a Saturday afternoon event. A bunch of us went to the indoor shooting range and you
Uh-huh.
know learned about firing rifles and pistols and such. It was kind of fun, but one of the points the teachers made is in that women are actually for a few biological reasons are actually better shots a lot of time than men. So to the point that if they're serving in the military, there's definitely a role and a need, and
Hmm.
um, it's so it's happening, and the mandatory conscription is, in some other countries it more might be more along the lines of, all right, well, this is good for our country and everybody
Hmm.
should serve and such. It's more of a practical um, reason here, in that that I don't know exactly what the figures are, but if push came to shove, the people with military, the number of people with military training in this country it could flex to almost a million.
Yeah.
Um, and when you've got an aggressive neighbor next door that's massive,
Yep.
um, that's just part of the deterrent. Is, hey, we're a small country. It's 5.5 million people here,
Right.
but we can roll out a military that's approaching a million people if need be, and
Correct.
that's going to have a deterrent effect.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And I don't think that, I mean, around the dinner table, the topic came up as to who trained in what, doing what in the military, when I was
Oh,
visiting
interesting.
In February. And it was just interesting to hear how they talked about their specialties, and there were jokes, and it was this like humor, how to make light of this reality, which they live with, right? I think I heard this interview with, it was an Australian, from, I think it was Canberra, interviewing
Hmm.
the Finnish ambassador, who of course is very eloquent in their own sort of subtle way. And
Hmm.
basically he was saying, we don't panic, we're calm, we don't get alarmed by things that are like appear on the radar screen with news. I think he was just saying those sort of subtle messages are not lost on the people who listen to them. And there's a consistent way the Finns share how they just sort of be ready. I think that's one of the
Yeah,
ways they do it.
I think there's a quiet confidence among the people about, their ability to basically uh, forestall any sort of advance by their eastern neighbor.
Yeah,
It's like the military is, it's not trained uh, waiting for orders to, invade Greenland or something. It's trained to defend against an invasion from the east. And
correct.
so, that's what they're trained to do. And,
Yep.
I'm it, I think it's pretty safe to say that, um, if even with the current instability in Russia, it's they're not gonna they're not gonna mess around with Finland. I mean, the stuff with
Yeah.
the ships
Yeah.
cutting the cables. It's like it's disruptive in some of those cases. It's disruptive, but it's almost like somebody toilet papers the trees outside your house. It's almost just like it's annoying, and why'd you have to do that? What was the point of that? You're just being a brat.
I,
Um,
I do have these. I use WhatsApp to communicate with my
yeah,
relatives, and we do talk about these instances, and they're sort of like, this is nothing new. We've seen this
yeah,
before. I'm going to go about my life and focus on my job and raising my kid and do what I've always done before. It didn't sound like it was like blowing it up into big proportions. Now, I'm not there. I'm not seeing how social media reacts to this, so it's hard for me to see from the outside, but no one is surprised when something like this pops up on the radar. That's what I was taking away from my relatives there. So that's
yeah.
my impression.
I mean,
So,
there are some more hawkish people you'll talk to over here that are like, oh, it's about time we finally did something, and they want to see a little more pushback, but
mhm,
you know, it's just there's a range of reactions, but most of it's just kind of like eye roll and here we go
right.
again.
So one last thing, just speaking on current affairs. So
Sure.
I don't know if this is still going on. So one thing I was struck by, I was there when um, who was the Russian dissident who died in the the northern Siberian um, uh, prison camp just last February. I'll remember it, of course, when I'm done. Um,
Oh, the guy, the dissident, and
yeah, the
the
dissident
leader,
lead.
the guy. Yeah, I know you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name for a second. I his picture, I saw a mini memorial that appeared on a bridge in Tampere
Huh.
while I was there, and then also I've noticed that they're still flying the Ukrainian flags in public spaces. Is that still going on in
I
the
haven't seen.
municipal?
No, I haven't seen. I see more Ukraine flags in New Jersey than I do in
Okay,
Finland.
okay.
Um,
I
but
did see a bunch.
like I said when we've talked offline, it's I usually just fly into Vanta and head up here. So, there
Okay,
may be a different vibe in Helsinki or
yeah.
in other parts of the country.
Yeah, I just know at the train station, which if people don't know, it's this magnificent building with these imposing stone sculptures in front.
Hmm.
And when the times I've been in Helsinki, I've seen the Ukrainian flag flying out the top. So it just stands out in my picture. So I know it's there because I took a picture of it. Oh, there's the flag. It's right there. So that's how I knew
Yeah.
it was sort of going. And I heard the other day that it was the Finnish representative to NATO who was advocating that Ukraine be a member of NATO when that status is still not fully determined by the NATO countries, and that we'll see where that goes. So it was interesting that the Finns were the advocates that Ukraine be a NATO member, since Finland
Yeah, I
was,
mean, they're geographically that Ukraine's in a similar position
yep,
as Finland in that they share a large border with Russia. But yeah,
yep,
we'll see what happens in the
yep.
first 24 hours following the inauguration when this whole war is supposed to be solved if the NATO membership is part of the negotiations.
Yeah, well, that's beyond my ability to predict that, but I have my ideas, and I'll save those for other places and other
Yeah.
times. All right, so then we've covered a lot of ground, I guess. So, is there anything that you would? I mean, one thing that I try to do is just give people some awareness about what Finland is, current
Mhm.
contemporary stuff. One things I do is I follow Yle, which is the that's YLE for people
Right.
who don't know what it is.
Yeah,
So
I
it's a
call
news
them
source.
Finland's BBC.
Right. It's a good place for people to get information. So
Yep.
I recommend that. And I listen to their podcast called All Points North, and they have some
Yeah,
Irish
I've listened
guy.
to that after you pointed
Yep.
that out.
Yep. So it's a good place if you want to sort of catch up on sort of like a perspective. It's some outsiders and insiders together. Is there like if someone was interested in like spending more time there, are there places or things you'd like them to learn about just to know about what's it like being an outsider living in Finland in, 2025? What would you
Well, I
recommend?
mean, like a lot of places, you can get by with English and a lot
Uh-huh.
of smiles and some pointing.
Uh-huh.
Um, it just depends on the person, what they're into. I mean, if you talk to most people in America, they're not their idea of where to go in January is not a colder place. It's Florida or some island. So,
Right.
if you narrow it down to the people who are actually interested in visiting a place like this, then there's a lot of things there's tons of stuff you can do
Yep.
from an outdoors perspective,
Yep.
especially.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to the summer around here when I'll be able to get out on the lakes. It seems like there's more lake than land
Yeah.
in this part of Finland and just, experience some having all this right out my door and being able to do it.
Right. I mean, I totally love I could find trails everywhere where I was, and I always had a great like I would do like I did a day trip Kristinestad, which is the coastal area, which is a historic kind of like not quite a World Heritage site, but similar on the coast
Yeah.
south of Vasa. And
Uh-huh.
I had a day. I was visiting my cousin there. I stayed at his cottage on the water, and I arrived early, and so I found this trail system and it took me through these farm fields and a forest, and it was awesome. It was just
Yeah.
sort of everything was marked, and you could tell people have been there, and that probably different users are using it for different reasons. Probably hunters go through there. So it was just sort of, it was there, nature was there, and also accessible without driving very far. And I
Yeah,
love
I
that
mean, I
about
think that
Finland.
there's a little more, people are a little more relaxed about, um, you know, private land versus
Yep,
public land. And,
yep.
I know that when I was out riding my bike in the fall, I went down some dirt road that probably just cut through some farmer's land. And, nobody
Oh,
was there with a shotgun telling me to get the heck out of there. I was just kind of like, oh, okay, all right.
well, that's
Probably should keep
that.
going.
Yeah, I think that's a tradition in Europe. The right to roam, I think, is what they call it, in English
Yeah.
language. I don't know what the Nordic traditions
Yeah, it's
are for.
definitely, I'm aware of it in England. It's like these public paths that go through private land are sort of
Yep,
well protected and
yep, yep.
cherished.
Yep, that's true. Okay. All right. Yeah, I loved how you just described that there's going to be a discerning number of people who self-select and focus on like life in the North. That's a really excellent way to describe the folks. And it's probably people who are on like the Nordic Ski Facebook
Right.
forum. Those are the types of people who would consider going to Finland. And then I think there's this other group of people who have Finnish heritage, which I'm in that bucket, who
Yeah.
are discovering their heritage later in life. And there's a whole bunch of us in Canada and in the USA who are sort of like finding those sort of roots that got cut off or whatever. So there's us too. So there's that bucket of people in the United
Yeah, I mean,
States.
and I'm not trying to start a land rush over here that, jacks up housing prices, but it's very affordable. I mean, I paid under 50,000 euros for a three-bedroom house, and um, part of that
Okay.
is prices are suppressed along the border just because the demand has dropped because there were a lot of Russian investors, but
Ah,
it's something that's very affordable, and you try to do something similar in Norway, and it would be 10 times that. So
yeah.
if you're lucky, you have Finnish heritage and not Norwegian heritage.
Yeah, I appreciate my Finnish heritage. People always said I'm stubborn, and so I've determined that there is
Yeah,
a genetic component to stubbornness. I think in a good way. It's just sort of not
yeah,
not getting frustrated when you don't get your way or things don't go as planned. You just don't get bent out of shape about it. You just keep going forward and don't worry about it too much, and maybe things will like change if you just keep doing what you do. So that's sort of
yeah,
that's one of the things I consider to be a sort of a Finnish thing is don't get too bent out of shape if it's not going well. Things were worse in the past, which is, I think, ingrained in Finnish thinking. It was like,
yeah,
oh, 150 years ago, everyone starved to death. So don't worry, don't just stop your whining,
yeah.
and
No,
take a
I mean,
sound
the
and
standard of
relax.
life, if you look at, I mean, the GDP growth is on par with other Western countries. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure economists would pick at that, but it's very high standard of living over here. And like you say, everything seems, um, well maintained, and, everything's
Mm.
available. If you want to go, I go down to Imatra if I want to go big box store shopping, and,
Uh-huh.
you can get anything you want. So
Right, right. Okay. Any final things you'd love to share? Like, is there going to be like are you going to do some sort of cool ski trip somewhere you didn't go for the winter? Any happy, fun things?
I've got a big race down in Estonia this
Ah,
February, which I'm looking
okay.
forward to.
All right.
It's part of the World Loppet race down there. So I'm going to head down to Tartu in middle of February and do a vintage ski race there. So I'm really looking forward to that. I've never been to Estonia, but
Okay.
the
Is that
nice
going to be?
thing about it is for me, it's just a road trip
Yep.
instead of hopping on a plane and making a couple of connections and such. So
Okay.
that's what I'm really
Is that going to
looking
be
forward
single
to.
track for you or skate? Is that single track?
No, yeah, it's all like it's wood skis It's
Oh,
a
okay.
it's part of the, there's for these World Loppet races, they have all sorts of events, and this
Uh-huh.
is just one of the events that they have there. There's the main race, which is probably 70K or something, but this is a 30K race for old people in knickers, and
Okay.
I'll be
And
participating in that.
so you say these are wood skis?
Yeah,
Okay. And what are the bindings? Just so I know, I'm not familiar with the binding
you
system. What is
can,
that?
I think that the guidelines is anything made before 1970, which is,
Okay.
if anyone knows the history about equipment changes, you probably want to say early 70s and before. But
Hmm.
you know, yeah, if you really want to go all in, then 75 millimeter 3-pin or 4-pin bindings are more common in Finland.
Okay.
But I know a lot of people ski on wood skis use modern boots for a lot of reasons that make a
Okay.
lot of sense. And so, I
Okay.
think that works too.
That sounds pretty cool. And so then you get to what? Take the ferry over to Tallinn?
Yeah, I'll drive down to Helsinki, take the ferry to Tallinn, and then I think it's about 3 hours southeast into the mountains.
Okay.
And then I'll come back. And then in March, the World Cup's going through Tallinn, doing city sprints. So I
Uh-huh.
think I may go over and cheer that on. And similarly, just drive down to Helsinki and hop the ferry and go cheer on the Americans, Jesse
That sounds
Diggins
really
and
that
and
sounds
their
really
friends.
cool, Brian. I'm jealous.
Yeah, yeah.
So enjoy being the person ringing the cowbell or whatever you want to, however you want to make noise. And for folks who don't know what it's like to take the ferries, they're really cool. And if you go over there, definitely take a ferry trip. And that's a really popular one because the old city in Estonia and Tallinn is supposed to
Yeah, I
be
can't wait to
amazing.
check it out. I've not been, so.
Yep. So people can Google that and figure it out, and it's well documented. And if you are into things like Rick Steves tells you how to do it if you look for the
Yeah,
simple
I'm
way.
sure he's got a good overview program on
Okay.
on that.
Well, Brian, I don't want to take up more of your time. I really appreciate it, and I hope we stay in touch. I'll look
Yeah,
forward to some maybe
definitely.
of your posts and pictures on the Nordic Ski Forum, so you can
Yeah.
just entertain us for those of us who aren't skiing as much these days, and share some nice stories about the trails in Finland.
Yeah, well, if you get over to the east side, let me know.
Okay, and I'm gonna thank you again. Kiitos vielä kerran for spending time with us today on the Finding Finland podcast. Be sure to visit us for more conversations about all things Finland. Remember, you can find all the podcast episodes on your favorite podcasting platform by visiting the Finding Finland webpage. See you again soon.